Let's see this. This is something from GameTalesHQ, and this is just a little video on the timeless beauty of pre-rendered graphics, and it's just a really solid little thing, making you appreciate this style of graphical representation that used to be very common and now is almost unheard of. It's extremely rare nowadays. But look at this, especially this this little opening montage. It's going to make you feel really old. This is the original like Baldur's Gate box and everything. And do you guys remember, like, did you grow up around this time when they had these monitors that were like this thick and they would hum? And then the keyboards were also massive, and when you would just like touch them, they would creak and squeak like rough, gross plastic. Those were the days, man. Those were the days.
Back at the PC games of the late 90s and early 2000s, there's a distinct visual style that I believe truly stands the test of time. It's when the game employs pre-rendered graphics paired with an isometric perspective. Curious about what that looks like? Here, let me show you.
Desperados. Basically, what it is that they render out assets fully, and then they have NPCs in like sprites. Oh dude, this was my stuff. I played the ever living crap out of Stronghold. Like, oh my God, I played these games so hard. But they'd basically render the asset and then they'd have it all in these little bitty sprites, and then those sprites could be placed on screen. Now, like Factorio would be another example he'll probably show. And the perks of this is that it's extremely easy to run. And so you get these games that are massive, but run on, by today's standards, potatoes. I mean, like they can run on a Casio wristwatch or like an Apple Watch easily. They're just extremely efficient. Downsides are like, because they're pre-rendered, you can't go above a certain frame rate. So like Factorio, for example, you can't play that above 60 frames because the sprites are all rendered at 60 frames. So you can't go above it because it won't do anything. You could double the frame rate, but it's still just going to be the same as the sprite count or sprite frame rate. So there's like that downside. Of course, it's not full 3D. You can't freely move the camera, but a lot of these games have rendered multiple angles of buildings so you can rotate, or they'll rotate the building with you. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do, but yeah, it's extremely common in the early 2000s. Yeah, SimCity, Planescape Torment 99. Oh yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon used it. Yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon, if you also have never seen like the videos breaking down how they coded that, it is madness. It is absolute madness. The fact that it works at all is crazy. Yeah, the original Fallout games. Oh,
Is
man.
it just me, or do these games look just as beautiful as they did over 20 years ago? The rich details, the handcrafted feel and level of cohesion all culminate into one of my favorite aesthetics of that era. Where did this style come from, you might ask? Well, allow me to explain. Back in the late 90s, real-time 3D graphics were still in its infancy. These early games were usually pixelated, lacked details and suffered low frame rates. Rendering complex scenes in real time requires a lot of processing.
Oh, dude, yeah, when shooters were all on the keyboard, you didn't even use a mouse on it. So like he's using the directional buttons with WASD and everything. Oh man.
Power and memory, which many computers at the time simply didn't have. To achieve a higher level of fidelity, developers thought of a solution. They'd create highly detailed environments, characters and objects, then render them on powerful PCs as static images or sequences of images. All assets were created with a fixed isometric perspective. This means they are viewed diagonally from above. Despite their static nature, isometric pre-rendered graphics can create the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality through clever use of shading, lighting and perspective techniques. Since these games didn't require rendering most or any of their assets in real time, developers could pack them with far more detail than the true 3D counterparts. This particular art style was most prominently seen in role-playing, strategy and management games. I'd say the golden age started with the first Diablo in 1997 and ended around the start of 2003 with SimCity 4. Occasionally, you'd still stumble upon a game using this art style, but by the end of 2004 it had largely become obsolete. Which leads me to the question, why was this technique mostly abandoned by the mid-2000s?
My guess is just because 3D stuff was easier to sell. Like, especially in like 2003, 2004, that like, if a game was not 3D, it's almost like if an animated movie nowadays is not 3D animation and it's like 2D, people get weirdly like almost not quite turned off by it, but they're like, okay, you know. The exception, of course, being Klaus. Klaus, I will die for. That movie is phenomenal. If you've never watched Klaus, do it. It's a Christmas movie that will tug at your heartstrings. And technically, well, they use like a really, if you should watch the documentary they did on it, because they use like an AI tool to shade it so it appears 3D even though it's like 2D. It's really, really cool. It's fascinating. It's so good. Pepperidge Farms remembers. Yeah, it's so good. It's such a good movie. Oh my god.
The whole reason this technique was used in the first place was due to hardware limitations.
Look at that.
However, as we entered the mid-2000s...
Step aside the 4090. Look at that thing. Wow. Look at that. And then you compare it to like the modern GPUs that have like 3 fans and are this thick. And oh my god, it's ridiculous. But look at that thing. Wow.
Thousands, rapid advance...
No, okay, who said balding? I'm talking about the graphics card. Chill out. The guy's living his life. Look at that thing. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Oh, and the heat spreaders. This thing ain't overheating. Try to overheat it. It's not doing anything. Oh, yeah, and then the what is it? VGA? Or is it VAG? The VAG. Whatever that is. The port that had screws. That one sucked. But yeah, that was a thing. I remember those. Those were so stupid. Back in the day when computer plugs had screws in them. I think we should retroactively call it the VAG port. I think that's what we should say.
And new graphics hardware and rendering techniques emerged. These advancements made it possible to render 3D graphics in real time that didn't look like a slideshow.
It's pretty clean, smooth looking animation considering, compared to the Doom type stuff.
Oh, how the times have changed. Another reason for the switch to 3D is the limitation of pre-rendered graphics in terms of interactivity and adaptability. As games evolved to become more complex, the use of pre-rendered graphics became increasingly impractical. The same applied to the development of pre-rendered.
This also, I'm just gonna say, like, this is an NVIDIA E3 2004 demo.
Rendered graphics.
So like, every time we see tech demos, people always say, yeah, but we're never going to see this actually employed. And you might not see that particular instance employed by a game development company or something. But every time we've gotten like tech demos, graphically speaking, we've overcome it and surpassed it. We'll see tech demos of stuff where they're like, look at our AI systems. Isn't this amazing? And sometimes those don't see the light of day just because it's not actually like they were just lying. It's like, no, this wasn't running in real time. This was all scripted, made up. But when they're showing like this is real time running, graphics, it's super specialized, but yeah, it's running in real time. We always eventually catch up to it and surpass it. So when you see like those tech demos of Unreal Engine, yes, they're extremely specialized and very carefully arranged to look amazing, but that will be a thing. Like that level of quality will eventually happen. It's crazy.
Graphics became increasingly impractical. The same applied to the development of pre-rendered graphics. If you wanted to change an asset, you couldn't simply tweak it, you had to fully re-render it. Being able to tweak a model within a couple of clicks meant developers could work a lot faster. You're inclined to think that was it for the aesthetic, right? Well, I'm happy to report it's made a bit of a comeback, especially in the indie scene. It seems I'm not the only one who still adores that pre-rendered look. Obsidian Entertainment released a game called Pillars of Eternity in 2015, developed by CRPG veterans like Josh Sawyer, Tim Kaine and Chris Avallone. Obsidian would drop 2 more games in this graphical style with Tyranny and Pillars of Eternity Deadfire. Another relatively recent game with an amazing pre-rendered art style is Disco Elysium. In this game, they went for a more painting-like aesthetic. Next up are the...
It's also kind of hybrid because it's like this stuff is all pre-rendered, but the character models and NPCs that sit on top of it, it's not sprite based or anything. They're actual models being rendered in real time. Oh yeah, Disco Elysium's beautiful.
Brotherhood's games. They are an indie studio that made 4 adventure games in this style called Kane, Stasis, Beautiful Desolation and Stasis Bone Totem. Then there are also games that keep the isometric perspective but don't use pre-rendered graphics and go for hand-drawn sprites instead, like all of Supergiant's games. Alongside all of these new releases, a lot of classic games have received the remaster treatment. This allows people to enjoy these timeless games on modern machines. And man, do they look beautiful on there. It's a testament of why hardware and budget limitations can produce some incredible art. In a world where AAA studios relentlessly pursue photorealism, nothing inherently wrong with that of course, I'm happy to see the preservation of these older games and the passing of the torch to create new ones. I've compiled a list of my favorite games in this style, that I think deserve your attention. Feel free to pause the video if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Roller Coaster Tycoon, Age of Empires, Diablo 2, Stronghold. I don't know how the original Sims holds up. Robin Hood, games. Oh yeah, there's just so many. All of these. Play all of them.
Of course, there are plenty more games that use this art.
Stronghold Crusader. This is one in particular I've spent a stupid amount of time playing. Stronghold Crusader we specifically had on like our family computer that could run it somehow. And yeah, we played so much Stronghold Crusader. So much. I'm also just going to say that stockpile, way too small. Way too small. If your stockpile doesn't spill out the back and then basically create a basketball court behind the Stronghold, what are you playing? What are you even doing?
Style, but this is a nice place to start. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to me ramble on about video game art. If you want to see more retrospective content like this, I'd really appreciate it if you like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.
Oh yeah. Go give him a sub. I'll share the link in chat real quick. And just a really solid retrospective video. And how refreshing to have a video, and I'm saying this as a YouTuber that is part of the problem. How refreshing to have a video that's 5 minutes long, covers the topic nice and cleanly, answers it abruptly and precisely, instead of being like 35 minutes filled with random sound effects of VHS tapes and stuff. Like this is very nice. I understand why the art style is no longer commonplace, but still. He took my thing. Red flag.